good afternoon, whatever time of day it is that you are listening, folks. Thank you very, very much for listening. Date today is the 15th of March, year of our Lord 2024. Welcome to yet another edition of The Coping Hour, hosted by Nicholas Inkle, a.k.a. Motown Noah. Got a big show for you guys today, as is customary here on The Coping Hour. We are going to talk a lot about basketball, especially here in the, in the front end, the front nine of this episode. Can we start with something that's happening off the field, off the court? It transcends a single sport. Kind of owe you guys an apology, because on Monday's episode we did a brief little segment where I was like, NBA players whose politics you'd want to learn the least, and at the end I threw in a sneaky little Steph Curry, right? And we talked about it a little bit. If you're interested, you can go back. There are timestamps. Use them to your advantage. It was literally the next day that Steph, I don't know, he's coming out with like a memoir or a kid's book or some bullshit. I don't know what Steph's got going on, but he was in front of a microphone, he was on camera, he was on TV, talking about how he wouldn't rule out a presidential run in the future, and that he's extraordinary, and that he doesn't want to handicap his influence or his reach. And rightfully, you guys, you kind of dug into me a little bit for this, because it does kind of feel like I'm responsible. So Steph, if you're out there, apparently you do listen to the show. Don't do this, because we're going to spend a few minutes here talking about, like, what would a Steph Curry presidency look like? Like, the Bible is still warm from him getting sworn in, and, like, what's one of the first executive orders that he, implements, puts into place? Well, it's probably going to be illegal to be poor. Affordable housing is out the window. Like, shoot on sight poor people. Polyamory is probably going to be some sort of a constitutional mandate. Is the bigger question here, who is Steph Curry's, in this fictional world where Steph Curry is the president of the United States, who is the Dick Cheney? Who is the Henry Kissinger to Steph Curry's presidency? Is the easy thing to say Draymond Green? Is the easy thing to assume that the guy who's going to, like, artificially manufacture a conflict somewhere in the Middle East, somewhere in South America, somewhere in Europe, Draymond Green, the guy who just has this strong predilection for stirring shit up and being able to find out a way to make it advantageous towards himself and pretty much just himself exclusively. I feel like Draymond's going to be the easy pick. Jordan Bell, I think, may have been up there too. I think I'm thinking a little too hard and not smart enough about this, so I'm going to open the floor to you guys. I gave you Draymond Green, Jordan Bell. I feel like Thanasis Antetokounmpo would be good for this one too, but not U.S. born, so he cannot be a member in the United States government. We did actually get an email about this that I kind of want to jump into, because the guy made some extraordinary points. I probably should have. This is bad hosting by me that I didn't just immediately have this pulled up. So here's my list of NBA players whose politics I do and do not want to hear. I would love to hear what Kai Jones has to say. Can you imagine how legendary that Instagram Live would be? Well, the problem with Kai, he's one of those guys that when you end up being wrong about him, you weren't wrong about him in the right ways. You know what I mean? This isn't even about what your email is. But you ended up being wrong about him in ways that it's just like, oh, so he was like, he's just addicted to drugs? I still don't really understand what happened with him. Because when all that went down, it was kind of when I was in like a mental hiatus from the NBA. And I was just like, oh, Kai Jones is like off the shits now, and he's just like saying crazy stuff on IG Live. Wherever he's playing now, I don't know if it's China or if he's playing in Europe. I don't know where Kai Jones is playing now. I saw some highlights recently, and the dude is literally like Wilt Chamberlain. It's some of the funniest shit I've ever seen. Another fun one would be Şengün, this is back to the email, to see what side of the Turkish politics scene that he's on. Is he more Enes Freedom, or is he more Heydü Türkoğlu? This is an important one. Because Enes Freedom, AFK Enes Kanter, or not AFK, it would just be FK, Enes Kanter, was like under duress from Erdogan. And there was a moment where he got like stuck in an elevator or something, and he thought he was going to be assassinated. And then there was actually a stealth word out there that there was actually a price on Enes Kanter's head. And so he was kind of evading like the Turkish government. And that's partially why he's embraced America in the way that he has, and is sort of blackballed himself from the NBA. And then the inverse of this is, to your point, Heydü Türkoğlu, who I don't think he joined like the parliament or the Congress of whatever they got going. I don't think it was that intense, but didn't he get involved in politics in like a really aggressive way? And even like Blake Griffin kind of had to be like, whoa. And if Blake Griffin is getting involved in this, then shit gets pretty real. The thing about Shengun is like, what was one of the weirder conspiracies of the last, like, I don't want to say 10 years, but for all intents and purposes, 10 years. One of the weirder conspiracies was right after the draft, Shengun goes to Houston, and I think it was the bridge between the draft and Summer League, which is only like 2 weeks. Like, they pretty much get going immediately. But I remember the Rockets had like a team-appointed interpreter that they were like, hey, yeah, just use this guy. Like, just use this guy. He's on the payroll. He's really, really nice. They're a really, really nice guy. Just use him, and he'll translate everything for you. And Shengun's camp was like, nope, we're good. We're going to use this guy. He's like off the plane from Turkey. And this is who we want Shengun to be talking to. And there was it's interesting to look back on how we immediately, it's just interesting the lenses that we are trained to look at things through. The immediate assumption was that Shengun was like a Turkish agent sent by Erdogan to destroy the NBA from within and to like gather intelligence. And the reason that he didn't want to use the Rockets interpreter was because, well, like I just said, he was sent by the government and they were like, no, we have to keep this tight-knit squad together. I think in the email he also said he doesn't want to hear from Cade because he's a vegan, so it just immediately cancels it out. Maybe that's valid. I don't know. I want to hear from Cade. I really should have grilled him in the interview. I should have been like, so, well, he wasn't able to vote in 2016. Who did you vote for in 2020? Did you go blue? Did Oklahoma go blue? Surely it didn't. Surely Oklahoma was red in 2020. It's probably always is, though. No. Let's move on. Technically, kind of. Are professional athletes in sports with like presidential aspirations kind of having a moment? Because if it wasn't Steph Curry, it was Aaron Rodgers. And we're hearing this word out there, this report from the New York Times that RFK is thinking about letting Aaron Rodgers on the ticket. Thinking about going on the ballot with Aaron Rodgers as his VP. First of all, you sitting at home, you sitting in your car, you smoking weed while listening to this, you have just about the same percentage chance at getting elected president this year as RFK does, honestly. Unless he has like a Jared Mencken in Succession-esque like Cinderella run. Does RFK have a Linsanity run in him? I don't know. But here's the thing. I've pretty unapologetically been an Aaron Rodgers guy just because I think he's so damn funny. He's just so funny. Because he means everything that he says, but like also he doesn't. He just lies habitually. And then CNN comes out with this like kind of hatchet job. Kind of a bang-up hatchet job. It was more like a hack job, honestly. Being like, here's this thing that Aaron Rodgers said in private 8 years ago. Okay? And the thing that he said privately 8 years ago was that, like, Sandy Hook didn't happen, and all the kids were crisis actors, like it was the whole Alex Jones thing. Pretty hard line in the sand for most people on that one that, we're all pretty open to conspiracy theories, especially in 2024, where, like, even 10, 15 years ago, if you believed that 9/11 was like, if there was something kind of weird that happened with that was like as crazy as it got, honestly. Like maybe you were like a moon landing was fake thing. Like, yeah, maybe somewhere up there, somewhere in the pantheon, they're kind of probably like on the Mount Rushmore of the early 2010s conspiracy theories are those two things right there. Surely there are some other ones that I'm just not thinking of. But the Sandy Hook thing, people have always just been out on, and I think it's probably because it was spearheaded by Alex Jones, who most people are like, nope, nope. So Aaron Rodgers allegedly said something in private where there's no recording of it. Okay, that just doesn't feel like news to me. It just doesn't feel like news to me. But the problem that I have with it is, because at the risk of sounding like I'm defending him, which maybe so far it does, I am not. The problem I have with this is, well, it does sound like something he would have said. Damn it. It does sound like something that he would have done. And so you do this tag team of, I cannot get the image out of my head of Aaron Rodgers quarterbacking for the Jets and being the vice president, because you're going to tell me that can't happen. Dude, you have to be on the clock for like 15 hours out of the calendar year to be the vice president. You don't do that much. You really don't. Kamala has been the vice president for, coming up a little 3 years and change. This is coming up on her last year here. And it's like, how many times have you really seen her? She doesn't do that much, right? Did Joe do more as VP? Even him, I don't really remember seeing him that much. It's just, I feel like Mike Pence was kind of in the mix a lot, but that may have been for some other reasons. Just imagine the timeline that in a 15-month span, Aaron Rodgers is carrying out the flag out onto MetLife and then blows out his Achilles 3 plays into the season. 15 months later, he's getting elected into the White House as the vice president for Robert Kennedy Jr. Huh? And I think that, hey, we haven't said anything on this show that puts us at the risk of getting put on a list in a while. So, hey, 11 minutes into today's episode, why don't we do that really quick? What if and hold on, and stay with me on this, but what if the CIA is like, oh, fuck, not another Kennedy, and they're like, job's not finished, and he gets elected president, but then X, Y, and Z happens, and then Aaron Rodgers is left to be the damn president of the United States. Huh? If that's not the American dream, honestly. But the problem with Aaron Rodgers being president is, dog, you can't go on a darkness retreat when you're the fucking president of the United States. You just can't. And then come out of the darkness retreat like, yeah, I thought about retiring. I thought about, just being like, I don't really want to do this president thing anymore. This guy, goes to Cal Berkeley, gets drafted, sits behind Brett Favre, quarterbacks brilliantly for the Packers for 15 years, goes to the Jets, decides, I don't really feel like it, becomes vice president, and then the aforementioned X, Y, and Z happens, becomes president. That's the American dream, is it not? The American dream for who is the question. Probably people that we're not rooting for. So that was a very brief edition of Have You Seen This? Or not Have You Seen This, Have You Heard About This? But things I saw this week. So to carry on things I saw this week, but talking about things that maybe you guys will actually care a little bit more about. Let's talk about basketball. There's been a lot going on in Pistons land the last few weeks, but the main flavor of the week that I want to talk about here today, I've said a lot of mean things about James Wiseman this season, last season, in the past, even before he was on my basketball team. I think it's time that I do a tight 5 to 7 on how James Wiseman has been playing, but I don't talk about the bad stuff because we could do that all day. And I think it would feel productive to, for once, just call it like it is when he is playing well, because, here at the Coping Hour, we cover all the biggest stories from all angles, and we usually do the negative ones as it pertains to James Wiseman. He's been on a heater. We can call it what it is. It's been about a week now of some of the most consistent basketball that we've seen from James Wiseman. And in a season where the Pistons they're not playing for anything. They haven't been playing for anything since October, honestly. You blow out the Bulls in the second game of the year. We're like, whoa, is it starting to happen? And then immediately the season was over, right? It's not nothing for the locker room to stay committed. It's not nothing for a guy like Taj Gibson to come in, someone who's very clearly being groomed for a coaching role. I don't know if that's in Detroit. Hell, at this point, if he's going to turn James Wiseman's career around, why not? But what we're seeing from him is he setting screens? He's still kind of not doing that, but he's blocking shots. He's doing insane 2K moves, dude. He faked a dribble handoff the other night, took one dribble, one step from the 3-point line, and just yams it. These launching points that he has, you're like, he can't get to the basket from there. He's jumping 8 feet away from the rim. There's just no way. But he's got verticality. He's got an insane wingspan, so his reach is bop. And then he had another one the other night where he Euro'd in the paint. James Wiseman hitting a nasty Euro. It's literally stuff that you would do in 2K and then be like, you almost break the immersion level a little bit because you're like, well, that wasn't very realistic. That was a very video game-esque move. Half the shit that Luka does all the time, it was that. But that's kind of what he's been doing. He's been rebounding really well. You look in the, and plus minus, it's a very divisive stat. It's not the tell-all stat of the box score, but it's also not nothing at the same time. So when the Pistons, who by the way have been winning a handful of games lately, I believe as of this recording we've won 3 of our last 4. What in the world? James Wiseman has really only been a net positive. Now I think what stinks is what this has turned into for Pistons fans is the conversation immediately has to flip to, all right, what's going to happen this summer then? Like, what are we going to pay him this summer? James Wiseman's going to be a restricted free agent. The Pistons are going to have a ton of cap space. I think, two things are true, man. I think it's really easy to assume that Detroit would just kind of cut bait and decide that it's time to move on, that this experiment, it just didn't really work. Even if he finishes the next, 15 to 17 games, however many are left of the season, playing at this same level, what Detroit is going to run into this summer is they have to figure out which guys are part of the problem and which guys are part of the solution. Wiseman is one of those guys that you have to look at, right? And do you want to be, in year number 3, I think technically it would be the second full season. When did Wiseman get here? Of a reclamation project when you're really trying to turn the corner. Some would argue, well, that's how you have to get good, is you have to take chances on guys and you have to trust your scouts and you have to sure. I think if you're an anti-James Wiseman guy, the problem that you're having right now is it's easy to rationalize why they wouldn't keep him. I don't know what the price tag is. I'm not worried. Whatever. Hey, that's not my job. That's not what we do here. It's easy to rationalize why they wouldn't keep him. But you're forgetting about Troy Weaver. You're forgetting that he's the general manager. This is a guy who wanted James Wiseman on draft night. There was just no way that they were going to go up and get him. Troy has been vocal in the past about how he had Wiseman number 1 on his board that year. And he spent the next 2 years trying to trade for him until he actually did. Right? So because it's Troy, if Tom and Arn Tellem are really going to take that step back and just let Troy do his job, it's not out of the realm of possibility to think that he's going to want to stick with him. I don't think I want to do that, though, because I kind of don't care how well he's been playing these last few games. And again, even if he finishes the season playing this well, I think you just kind of have to look at it in totality, and you almost, as a Pistons fan, kind of miss Kelly Olynyk. You miss a guy like that mobile big who can, I say mobile, I mean, it's not like he was super athletic, but he was just as effective from inside the paint as he was from 27 feet. You know what I mean? I think that's what Detroit is really missing, and that's just not something that you're going to be getting with James Wiseman, especially if you want Jalen Duren at the 5. You can't just have a marginally worse version of the same guy on your bench. There has to be a little variety. There's got to be a little bit of spice. Maybe there doesn't actually have to be, but that's the way that I would think about it, at least, right? So James Wiseman going into next season, it's hard not to be a little bit excited about it. To finally see it come around. He's still super raw on some nights, but he's got the tools, man. He's got the frame. It's there. And hey, if it's all about Taj Gibson and what his presence has meant to this team, again, specifically to James Wiseman, then if you're going to keep James Wiseman, then you better keep Taj Gibson. What else do we got in the NBA this week? Well, you know what? Since we just did a bunch of positive James Wiseman talk, do you guys mind if I get into like my little haters corner? If you're a Phoenix Suns fan, you might want to close your eyes. The last 2 Suns games that I've watched in the last week were the 2 that they played against the Celtics. The one that they most recently played was just last night. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown just going berserk. That first half that Tatum had, just knocking down 2 threes right between the eyes on Kevin Durant. I'm just sitting up. I'm screaming looking at my TV. Jaylen Brown has like this. He's like smoked a layup and then immediately gets a steal and just yams. Like it was such a complete game from the Celtics. Not complete, but it was a good game from the Celtics. Here's the problem I have with the Suns. Is I don't think there's a team in the NBA who is as fake good as they are. They're just not good. They're just not good at all. And maybe I'm a little bit late to this train, but you watch them on nights where Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker, all 3 of them are playing. Even if only 2 of them are playing, this principle still applies, right? The Suns are so focused on those 3 dudes getting their shots that it feels like nobody else even wants to be there. And I'm thinking specifically about Royce O'Neal. Because when this trade happens and they get him for pennies on the dollar, you're like, wait, what? You're like, huh? How the fuck did they just get Royce O'Neal? That's like an actual NBA player, and they just got him for like a 12th grader and like a bag of Doritos. Like, how the fuck is Royce O'Neal on this team? That's an actual NBA player. I don't think so, though. I don't know if he is anymore. I don't know. Because He had the one game against the Lakers where he went for 20, and then I think he had one against the Rockets where he went to 20. But ever since then, he's been on the Suns for all of like 2 weeks now, 3 weeks now, and it's just zero. Every time he gets the basketball, he immediately passes out of it, and he's like, "Where's Kevin Durant? Where's Devin Booker? Where's Bradley Beal?" And you're going to tell me, well, that's what they pay the stars for, is to get their shots, right? Yeah, but like at least Grayson Allen always stays ready. Hell, even last night, there are moments where like Bol is staying ready. He's actually been kind of shooting the three ball semi-decent this year, too. So when I look at a guy like Royce O'Neal, and I just don't think he wants to be there, just doesn't look like he's ever ready for the ball, and then as soon as he gets it, it's like he's surprised that he actually got past the ball. I feel like that's just the constant. Even Nurkic just had a few games here and there. Obviously, the 31 rebound game that he had about a week ago. There are moments here and there where their role players really get the opportunity to shine, but it's far and few between, and it feels like it's seldom from multiple guys in one night, and it's usually just one. And that's just not a recipe for success. The one time that you will ever see me do a generational victory lap on this podcast is when my prophecy that Matt Ishbia is just Joseph Tsai 2.0 really comes to fruition and really rings true. And I think every game, man, every month that passes, every week that passes, we get a little bit closer, because it feels like he was 2 years too late to this party. I get it, man. You're in the chair as a brand new owner. You want to show the fans how serious you are about this. You want to show lower management how serious you are about this. How fun of an owner that you can be. You have this new toy that you can kind of play around with. He's been a sports fan his whole life. Like, this is what sports fans want, right? Is to be able to create their own team with essentially unlimited wealth. So you go after a guy like Kevin Durant. You go after a guy like Bradley Beal. I get it, and I can't be mad at you, right? But this formula, it just doesn't seem to work anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong. Does it not feel like you need that superstar. You're always going to need that superstar. But you need like an all-star level 2, and then the rest just needs to be like at least 1.5, 2 elite role players in there, and then the rest can just fill out itself, right? But I think gone are the days of building your roster through virtue of as many elite all-star talents as you can. Even Bradley Beal's some nights, so you're just kind of like, elite? I don't know. Elite? I don't know. Kevin Durant is always going to be elite. He could be 100 years old, and I'm going to be like, this dude is just the best bucket getter I've ever seen in my life. Insane. That's my spiel on the Suns. To wrap things up, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just became the first player this season to cross the 2,000-point threshold. First player to score 2,000 points this season. Luka is like 10 points behind him. Well, thank God that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the other night, the Thunder are down like 10 with 15 seconds left against the Pacers. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or should I say Shame Gilgeous-Alexander? That's what they're saying. That's what they're calling him. Not my words. That's what they're calling him. Intentionally fouls so that the Pacers go to the line. Again, down 10 with like 10 seconds left. Then the Thunder are down 12, and Shai just goes coast to coast, lays it in to ensure that he scores 30 points. We did get an email about something like this a couple of weeks ago, and I just forgot to read it, but the guy was completely right. There are a lot of people who are upset about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander point whoring at the end of that game, very shamelessly. Because the truth is, if it was the other way around, and the team who was up 10 was like, oh, this guy's got to get 30, like, we need to get an easy bucket for him, and then you're just kind of like pouring it on a little bit, dudes are going to start to pretend to fight at half court because you broke an unwritten rule. It's dumb. It's always been dumb. We as fans, that's not our job to care about that. Our job is to be like, look at this dude putting up bananas numbers. So I think, honest to God, I think anybody who looks at what Shai did the other night and thinks it's corny, like, who cares? But it's a double standard, right? Because I'm also the same guy who was mad at Luka for the last 2 games of that 6-game 30-point triple-double stretch, the one he had against Detroit, and then I think he was playing the Bulls in the next game, and he basically just did the same thing, where they're keeping him in the game late to pad his stats. Shame on me. Why do I care about that, man? We love when these players put up big numbers until they actually do. The fuck? I don't get the biggest cardinal sin of Steve Kerr's career as a coach for the Golden State Warriors is that he never let the Hamptons 5 go like full knife to the throat and win by 80 points, right? How many times do we see an NBA player on pace to break Kobe's record and get 82 points, but the coach is like, nah, dog, like, we're up by too much. You got to come out of the game. Oh, you've already played, 35 minutes. You got to come out of the game. Hell no. Hell no. Leave him in there, man. I get it's a long game and you don't want this dude to, like, you know, tweak something just because he was, like, hunting a record. But that's just why we're here. That's just why we're here. Do you think that when somebody, because no one's going to score 100, I just don't think it's going to happen. Especially now that the NBA is kind of trying to revert some of the offense and sort of swing the pendulum back in the defensive. Like, if they just kind of let this ride for, like, 3 more years, I don't think it's impossible to think that somebody would have broken 100, honestly. But 80 is going to happen. Somebody is going to get 82. Do you think it's going to be a close game when that happens? It's not. There's just no way that it is. Right? So I'm not mad at you, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Get your shit off. Get your points. I will say this. He does a post-game interview a few nights before. He's talking about, you know, I'm nothing if I'm not consistent. Please don't ever do this again. Please don't just because they weren't going to win the game. I don't want to hear this argument that, like, oh, well, you know, he's just trying to keep the Thunder in the game. You're down double digits with 10 seconds left. What the hell are you talking about? Right? You wanted 30. It's cool. Wear it, dude. You wanted 30. I think now does he lead the league in 30-point games? I know Giannis is up there. Giannis is just a game or two away from the most 30-point games that he's ever had in his career. Had another one against the Sixers last night. They went down sneaky big in that game, a game they had no business being down in. Thank God. Brook Lopez might have had the best game of his career. Had like 19 points on 5 threes. He had like 19, 7, and like 10 or something. Brook Lopez was awesome. Giannis is one of those dudes. I didn't realize that we're still watching Giannis hit like 15-footers, and broadcasters will still say, oh, well, once he starts hitting that shot consistently, it's over for the league. We're still saying that? You guys were saying that 5 years ago. Like, what are we talking about? Giannis's playmaking has been astounding this season. Some of these passes that he's able to make have been incredible. Something about watching Dame just bums me out in some of these games. Like I'm not saying I thought that the Bucks were going to win 75 games this year. Didn't you feel like it was going to be more than they're currently at? You're going to blame Adrian Griffin for that. Maybe that's valid, right? Maybe that's valid. They won against the Sixers, so it doesn't matter. That's everything I saw this week, ladies and gentlemen. Did you see all that? Did you hear about that? Let's move on. copingourSubs@gmail.com, spelled phonetically, is the email to the show. The email will be available in the description of wherever you listen to the show. This email comes into us from Mateo. Mateo, welcome to the show. Subject line, Piracy and the state of the NBA for international fans. Parenthetically, he put Italian perspective. Hi, Nick. I know I'm late, but first of all, congratulations on the pregnancy. Thank you very, very much. I'm writing this email while watching the 1 in a million televised games of the Pacers, and this made me think about the current state of broadcasting for international fans. So, just to check in, how are we feeling about piracy? I know that we as international fans are a minority, even less for fans of a small market team, but it is bizarre to me that the only viable option to watch a game is piracy. The NBA proposes itself as an international friendly association, but it is not really putting in the work to earn the title. I'm not going to argue about scheduling, and I'm not going to ask for them to play early so that I can watch at a reasonable time, but at least meet me in the middle with a broadcasting service. Like, what the fuck? Why do I have to pay the same amount to watch a game at an impossible time, mainly between 1 and 4 a.m.? I'm a night owl, and I follow the league a little bit more than a casual, but still, help me a little. The pass is not worth it. Buying the team pass to watch half of the games due to scheduling is useless, and if I want to watch a game without the Pacers, I'd have to buy the whole pack or go to streaming services. They are so money hungry, but they still lose a lot just because they don't care about the rest of the world or even casuals of fans of small market teams. And then parenthetically put, just to think about how Paulo Banchero had his first nationally televised game a month ago makes me angry. Just make a package for a predefined amount of games, 10, 20, or 30, so that people can pay for what they want to see. And for God's sakes, make it cheaper for those who have to follow at a stupid hour. I know it's not really the topic, but don't let me start on the role of international players as the face of the league. Parenthetically, I'm not following a lot of media, but from what I see, they tend to push American-born players for this role, even though the league is full of talent from around the world. Yeah, Luka Jokic and Wemby are cool, but what about fucking Scotty Barnes on odd Wednesdays? He is the best player in the league if we only look at his shots from behind the basket. He says, I don't have anything against Scotty, by the way, just a randomized player. You're right. The essence of what you're saying is right. We'll tackle it. Don't worry. NBA, please just care more. Nobody is going to destroy you because you make the league more accessible for fans and players from all over the world. Sorry for the rant, and congratulations again. P.S. Thank you for spreading the love for my boy Fontecchio. Go make Italy proud. Yeah, Fontecchio, thank you, Matteo, for the email. Simone Fontecchio, when you talk about, like, who was my favorite Piston, I think this is going to be the case for most people. You don't include Cade because he's number one. Like, he's just going to be number one until the day if he ever leaves, which God forbid he does. It's going to be Cade. Fontecchio Sneaky is my second favorite player on the team. There's an argument to be made on some nights that he's the second best player, but I digress. I sounded like Rick Toffin in the intro to Kino der Toten. Who would have thought the MGG? But I digress. Anyways, back to the email. I thought this was a beautiful perspective. Because us as Americans, folks, I don't know how often you think about what it must be like we have, dozens of Australians that email into the show, right? And especially for them, I mean, with the time difference, what is it, like 18 hours? So, people in different parts of the world having to tune into different NBA games. I think the only experience that I really have with this, I'm sure if there are some cricket fans out there, right? Catching a game in India, I don't know what the time differences are there, or, you're watching it in the UK, South Africa, wherever it is, but there's going to be a little bit of a jump and you're going to have to get up early, right? I know the closest thing that I think we have that most people will encounter is if you're trying to watch like a Premier League game or a Champions League game, and you got to get up a little bit early for that. I remember when I was in middle school and I would wake up at like 7 in the morning just to watch Chelsea. I'm not a Chelsea supporter anymore. Don't worry. Shout out to Leicester City. And then they got relegated, and I was like, well, Man City's cool, I guess. It's a fascinating perspective. Should there be a better alternative than piracy? Yes. Is there going to be? Probably not. Full transparency here. I've never a day in my life paid for League Pass. Ever. I have pirated games for a decade now. Right? Like, as soon as I moved out of the house, it's like we as Zoomers and even like the late stage millennials, dog, like, we don't pay for cable. Like, we just don't. All these streaming services have sort of formed their own lane. And if you want to watch NBC games, well, you can. You just have to get Peacock. And then if you want to watch CBS games, it's like, well, you can, but you have to get Paramount Plus and all this bullshit. And the joke has been made 1,000 times, but what all of these streaming services are doing is setting themselves up that by the end of the decade, I mean, how many of these platforms are merging into one another? Eventually, they're just all going to merge. They're going to fold into themselves and just recreate cable. That's what we're going for, right? I think the best service that we probably have right now, just based on some personal experience that I've had in the past and just people that I know, seems to be YouTube TV. That seems to be the most accessible. It is a little bit expensive, but like, hey, such is life. It's cable. You're getting all of these channels. Like, it just is what it is. You have to pay something, or you don't, and you just pirate the games. And I think what I really appreciate is that the people who use these websites are very smart about protecting what they're called. Not that the government doesn't know. Not that these broadcast partners don't know. They are very aware. I know there was a big stink that was made about it over the summer, kind of going into the fall, where the United States government was like, well, it was mainly these broadcast partners that were going to the government, and they were like, hey, people are able to like replicate streams in a way that you almost can't even tell that it's like a rip-off of the stream. It's like, well, that's just because they're just streaming the game and they're not adding anything to it. It is the most accessible thing to do, and it's free. I don't have a ton else to add here. I just thought that this perspective was fascinating. As far as why is the NBA so afraid to make an international player the face of the league? Well, first of all, and this isn't a take, this is just what it was, we aren't that far removed from like European players being like, oh my God, we just drafted a European player. We just blew the pick. We just smoked the pick. When Kristaps Porzingis got drafted, that was kind of when it started to turn. That was kind of, and when he finally decided to be good at basketball, it was kind of like, oh, okay, so we're allowed to draft European players. And now they dominate the league, right? Unless you're Gilbert Arenas and you think that they're slow and that they suck and that they can't play defense. Thank God we're hearing Gilbert Arenas' perspective, who was very famously like a world-eating defender, his perspective on fucking guys playing defense. Thanks, Agent Zero, for that. But if you look at a guy like Victor Wembanyama, NBA has done a pretty good job of putting him on camera and putting him in front of a microphone and being like, hey, world, look at this guy. He was everywhere at All-Star Weekend, And I think he's a dude that it's not going to be hard for them. It's hard to do it with Jokic. There's just not you just can't push it. The guy doesn't want to be there. Like, he doesn't. You know what I mean? I don't know if, because this is the first year, I believe, of his just insane contract extension. Are we sure he plays past that? Are we sure? By like I think it's a 5-year deal. I think he's done after it. He's going to like win a championship this year, probably, right? If it's not him, it's the Celtics. If it's not one of them. There are literally, I think, only 4 teams that are winning a championship this year. It's the Nuggets first, maybe the Clippers, maybe the Celtics, maybe the Bucks. But it so far seems like it's going to be the Nuggets. So he's going to get his shit off. He's going to get his MVPs. He's going to get his rings. And he's going to be like, all right, I'm out of here. But even when he wins rings, he doesn't want to be here. The season's too long. He wants to go home. So you just can't make that guy the face of the league, the guy who just doesn't even want to play basketball. For as generationally good as he is, you just can't, right? Giannis, this is a very easy argument to be made that you could, but not that he's old, but he came along very slowly, right? And then, as soon as he decided to get good, he's always been good, but as soon as he really became the Giannis that we know, it was about 5 years ago, well, he's not going to take that from LeBron, you know? And then since then, you have guys like Jokic, you have guys like Luka, you have guys like Victor come into the league, and Giannis kind of gets put in a precarious position with that, not just with international players, but just with guys across the league. You know, I didn't even mention Kevin Durant. I didn't even mention Steph Curry. So that's tough. Is there a conversation to be had about like Americans just wanting to like root for an American guy? Because here's my question, and I'm asking this very genuinely. In like the Premier League, right? How would people react if there was an American who was a world eater and that guy was like made to be the face of the sport? How would people react to that if it was an American? People would feel pretty weird about it. Because they'd be like, well, this isn't even their sport. Like, what do they care? Well, basketball isn't America's sport anymore. It's the world's sport. We see that in the FIBA World Cup all the time. We see that in the Olympics all the time. It's not us anymore. We're very good, and I would say pound for pound, we're still probably the best. They just fucking don't try, which is an indictment on. It does say something, right? You can't really be the best if you don't try. But for all intents and purposes, we're all on the same page here. You look at all these different countries. Brazil can have a moment here or there. You think about Spain, just on the back of Luka alone. Slovenia, sure, we can throw them in there. Like, it's not just us anymore. So we're trending in the right direction. I think by the end of the decade, it won't be hard for. You talk about the NBA draft, something that I meant to do today. We're not going to get to it. You think about the NBA draft this year, and it's a weird draft because, you know, the guys at the top in like the top 5 to 7 to 10, somewhere in the 5 to 10 range, you could look at 20 different mock drafts and 12 of them are going to have a different top 5. Seriously, like different players, different order, everything. There's not a consensus really anywhere. And what's the most interesting to me is that when you look at the top 5 of most of these mock drafts, none of them are from the NCAA. They're international players, or they're like American-born players who took alternative paths. They're playing for the G League Ignite. They're playing in Australia for not the Hungry Jacks. That's the thing that they always put at half court. But they're playing in Australia, right? That says a lot. That the dudes at the top end of a draft are either not from here or they had better opportunities to go somewhere else. There's a lot more nuance that goes into that, but the principle is true, especially for the international guys. We're seeing more and more of them at the tops of these drafts. Let's move on. I've got an email here. It's one of those ones that I just don't know if I have I don't know if I'm equipped. So it's just another one of those opening the floor. I know you guys are going to have some good takes on this. Email comes to us from Ryan. Ryan, thank you for joining the show. Subject line, did I thank the guy who sent in the thing about politics of NBA? I don't think maybe I did. If I didn't, thank you for joining the show. I don't even remember what the guy's name was, so I apologize if I didn't. Ryan, thank you for joining the show. Subject line, the science behind a celebration being cool. Greetings from Dallas. Congratulations on becoming a dad. Thank you very much. My comment from the announcer episode was about you hitting the silencer in the hospital post-delivery, and it got me thinking about the best in-game celebration moves in sports. For posterity breaking the email, I will probably do that. Like, I probably will. It's just kind of what I do now. I don't know if it's because of the show or if it's just because testosterone is a very real thing and it just kind of happens. It just kind of happens when I get excited. But back to the email. What exactly makes a celebration move cool or lame? How much of it is the fluidity of the move itself, the person performing it, the situation of where it's being performed, or some other factor? For example, if Jordan Poole came up with a new celebration move, would it automatically be considered lame since Jordan Poole is the originator? Yes. Please, Mr. Auer, break down the science of celebration moves for us and give us your take on some of the most notorious celebration moves in sports. The silencer, rock the baby, he's too small, etc. Much love, Ryan. I think the phrasing that you used here, I honestly think is the answer. The fluidity of the move itself. I don't always think it's the moment. The player does factor into this, right? If we want to just immediately talk, maybe this is how I'm going to sort of maybe get where I want to go, is if I just talk about the moves that I think are some of the best. I think the silencer is the best move in the history of sports. In the history of sports. And for all intents and purposes, we are only going to be talking about basketball here. I'm sure there are going to be some that kind of slip through the cracks for some other sports that I just can't think of, and I don't want to miss out on those. If I had to think of one for football, does the Heisman pose count when a dude knows that it's going to happen? Even if he's not a lock to win, he knows he's going to get invited to New York and they hit the in the end zone. That's always really cool to see. That's always really exciting. Desmond Howard, obviously. Are we going to say he popularized it? He did that before I was born, so I honestly don't know how many dudes were often doing it before that. But if we talk about the NBA, D'Lo, ice in his veins, he's very conservative about using that these days. But especially early D'Lo, it was really fun to see. Brooklyn D'Lo was really fun to see. Those Nets teams. Didn't they have a name? What did people call those Nets? Did they have a name? For some reason, I kept wanting to say Grit and Grind. That's Memphis. I don't remember what people called those Nets. The silencer, ice in his veins. I'm not big on rocking the baby. And for me personally, I think it's just because it's just disrespectful. And like if one of my players did it, I would be like, yeah, get your shit off, King. But it's just annoying to me. I didn't love when Russell Westbrook would always do it on his way to putting up like a 21, 15, and 13 night, but he goes 7 of 31 from the field. Like, oh, cool. Like, cool. It's just, here's one. Are we going to do the James Harden, this thing? Are we going to count that? Does that count? One of the more famous ones of all time. It wasn't really a celebration. It was just more of a thing that he did, honestly, in the moment. The MJ shrug, because that has kind of become its own thing unintentionally. And I think maybe that's worth something, because nobody's going to fucking hit the silencer. Nobody's going to ever do that. That's LeBron's thing, right? Ice in his veins, like, I'm sure some dudes have done it here and there, but for the most part, it's kind of like a trademark of D'Angelo Russell. Whereas, like, rocking the baby and, like, doing the he's too small, that's very universal, and it's not really attributed to an individual person, right? Did Russ invent rocking the baby? No way he did, right? There's no way he did. But if he did, maybe we'll tweak it, but there's no way that he did. The MJ shrug, I mean, Luka even had one the other night against Detroit where he just hits this preposterous sidestep. I don't remember if it was either late in the clock or with like 16 on the clock, so he just had no business putting it up. And he just kind of like looked back at his bench and he was like, I don't know how the fuck I just hit that. Like, I have no idea how I hit that. That one is always great to me. But yeah, I think for me, and maybe this just comes off as corny and lame, I don't love when it's sort of a detriment. When it's at the expense of another player, it just comes off as like weak to me. So when it's an isolated thing for the individual player, like Carmelo, I don't think this counts, but the 3 to the dome that he would always do after every single made 3, surely was who did the bow and arrow? Who made that up? Is that another one of those just universal ones? Dudes doing like the pop, 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 pop after they make a 3 and they holster the 3 fingers. Always love that one. Here's a fun fact for you guys. My partner right now, we met in high school. I was a sophomore. She was a senior. And there was one day so early in our relationship, like maybe a month into we weren't dating. We just started talking. We didn't know each other really at all. But after school one day, I was lifting weights for football, and she was just in the gym lifting weights. I mean, she played soccer, but she was just in there because she liked working out. And one day, after we were done working out, a bunch of dudes, we went out to the basketball court in the gym, and we were hooping. We ran some fives, but she was watching. So she like pulled up a chair with some of her friends and she was watching. Dog, I was cooking. If I run fives now, and historically in my life, I just don't score. I'll take shots, but they never go in. I'm not good with like the pressure of the moment. I can shoot around and shoot like 90%, but once we get into like a quote unquote game environment, I'm going to brick everything. I've never made that many shots in my life. And to this day, we will sometimes bring up to each other me doing like I knocked down a 3 and I was like, pop, pop. And then I holstered those shits. We still talk about that. And guess what? Now she's carrying our child. So fellas, find a signature celebration. And I do the silencer like religiously. Like she'll make dinner and I'll be like, this is fucking delicious. Bang. Well, not bang. LeBron doesn't say bang. Got a little too carried away there. Testosterone's a hell of a drug. Let's move on. Let's wrap up the show talking about something fun. Talk about something I've been doing lately. So I've been playing a ton of 2K. I mentioned that a little bit ago. I'm kind of off Madden a little bit. What are the Bears doing? Why are they doing this to me? Why is the NFC North like very quickly becoming the hardest division in football? And the thing that I keep telling myself is like all these teams are, and I'm saying this off the heels of last night, the Bears trading for Keenan Allen for a 4th-round pick. I understand why the move was made on the Chargers' part. I understand why all it took was a 4th-round pick. Does not make me any less pissed about it. Honestly, if anything, it makes me more pissed about it that the Bears were the ones that had the presence of mind to swoop in on it. But the thing that I keep telling myself is that they're doing this to catch up to the Lions, not the other way around. So Carlton Davis is going to shut down Keenan Allen anyways, so I'm not that worried about it. But playing all these sports games, I was like, nah, I need to shoot stuff. Like, I need like an FPS. I need something where I can kind of, So you know what I did? I paid $10 for Black Ops 1 on Steam. It was on sale. And I'm not going to pay for like map packs and stuff, which sucks because I'd love to play Ascension. But the reason that I did it was so that I could play some Kino der Toten and so that I could play some 5, which by the approximation of myself is like the worst map in the history of zombies. I hate that map because it's just impossible to get to high rounds, right? And I just wanted to play as JFK. Sounds like someone's breaking in. Calm down, Dick. It's just a storm. It's like the funniest cutscene of all time. Those quotes live rent-free in my head. But so I got to some high rounds on Kino because it's easy to like train on that map. I think I got to like 40 and then it was just kind of like, this is boring. And I just like died. I was like, this isn't fun. Once you get to a high round, like the juice just isn't really there. Like it would have been like 15 years ago when the game came out, right? 2011, so not quite 15 years ago, but I digress. So instead, what I decided to do was I went in the game files and I just added like console commands. But the only one that I added was no clip. So that way I could just kind of like look around the map and like see what was going on. But also specifically so that I could like get into cheese spots and I don't know, just like have some fun that way and like make it fun in my own way. And what it let me do was on 5 specifically. Do you guys remember when Black Ops originally came out? And there was that glitch on 5 where in the opening room, in the starting room, if you like broke a window a certain way and then rebuilt the barrier, you could like hop on the barrier and then hop onto the conference table and it was like, boom, like it's free real estate. You're just camping the rest of the time and like you're just chilling. Yeah, well, I wanted to bring that one back, so I just like no clip onto the table and I just hang out there and I just get to super high rounds on 5. And if I get cornered, once I jump off and like, I don't know, go hit the box or something, if I get cornered, I just no clip out of it. Can't kill me. And then eventually I get to like round 30. I'm like, all right, this isn't fun anymore and I'll just die. Here's the problem with 5 is the Winter's Howl like the worst wonder weapon in the history of those games. The Thunder Gun, I think, might be the best gun that any video game has ever made. Ever. Like, period. It's just fun. And it's always effective. Although, I think, isn't the Thunder Gun technically, if you get to a high enough round, even if it's pack-a-punched, right, and you got the nice little Zeus cannon, can't it not one hit? Sometimes it'll just, like, knock them over and they'll still chase you. I think that's a thing. The highest round I've ever gotten to legit was straight up when I was like 14, when Ascension had first come out, and I got to 52. And the way that I got to 52 was our bedtime was like a pretty hard 9 o'clock. If our parents were being nice that day, we could go to bed at 9:30. And there was a day where I was like playing from like 7 to like 9:30, and I got to like round 30. and I left my PS3 on all night. So that way the second that I woke up, I could just like get back into Ascension. Got to 52, and that was before we knew that it was like the easiest map that's literally ever been made. Call of the Dead is up there too. The Scavenger doesn't count as a wonder weapon, but boy, that thing ripped, especially if you kind of needed PhD Flopper with that thing. That thing was a beast. And then if you did the Easter egg, it's semi-easy to do it solo, then you would get the Wonder Waff for killing George Romero. Nice little cast of characters. Sarah Michelle Gellar. This is embarrassing that I can't remember the guy who played Freddy. This is horrible that I can't remember his name, but that guy. Robert Englund? I think it was Robert Englund, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Michael Rooker, and then who was the other one? I don't remember who the other one was. Michael Rooker at the time, like his thing was what? Like The Walking Dead? Merle was his character. He like is in like 2 episodes and then cuts his hand off and then you don't hear from him for like 2 seasons. And then he like pops back up and you're like, whoa. That show's still a thing, technically. It's technically over, but the spin-offs now, I'm confused because Rick was supposed to get like 3 movies was the original plan. And I'm not gonna pretend to know. I stopped watching The Walking Dead after like season 6. Once Alexandria was a thing, and like the governor, or not the governor, it would have been Negan. Negan was involved. The episode, honestly, that turned me off was this was kind of my like, I don't think I need to watch this show anymore. They do the cliffhanger of Negan with the bat, and then you're like, oh, who's he gonna kill? And then the season premiere, the following season, you figure out who he beat over the head. I guess I won't spoil it if anybody's in the middle of watching the show or plans to watch it one day, because it's a show that has good moments. It is what it is, but it was too much. It was so brutal that I think that was like a story at the time, is that so many people just like turned off the show after that. But it also didn't help that the show just sucked, and that first show that was about a zombie apocalypse seldom had much to do with zombies, like a lot of the time. And the first season was amazing. I'll never forget. When did that come out? Was that this 2010 maybe? I'll never forget. It premiered on Halloween night, and I came back from trick-or-treating, and I couldn't sleep that night, and I just had on AMC for whatever reason. And The Walking Dead came out. I was like, oh yeah, I'll watch the show. Watched the first 6 episodes every single week. I couldn't get enough of that show. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. And then the second season happens, and somehow they just like didn't have a big enough budget, and that's why that season technically sucked, and it was like only really on one location, and there just wasn't that much going on. Also was the death of, well, again, no spoilers, John Bernthal's character as Shane in that show is probably one of the most evil and well-acted characters on TV, especially when you know John Bernthal is like a dude, and you're like, holy shit, you like really transformed your person. You're not like that at all. John Bernthal, because of that show, is one of those actors that I legitimately hated him in real life because I couldn't separate the actor from the actual performance, because he just did such a damn convincing job of it, of really selling that he was just the worst, the most detestable human being in the world. Did create a pretty reasonable ethical dilemma, though. Well, again, I don't want to talk about the show because it's spoiled. The show's been out for fucking 15 years. What am I so... I think you guys spoiling Dune for me, honest, I'm already like a heavy no spoilers on this show guy, but I think you guys spoiling Dune is like making me subconsciously overcorrect for not wanting to like spoil stuff. So I guess I'm just not going to do that. I'm trying to think of some other stuff that's been going on lately that I can fill you in on, because I know there's going to be something that I'm going to forget about. Black Ops multiplayer just isn't that fun anymore. There are a few servers that you can play on Steam, and it's just, when you're not playing on controller and you're playing on keyboard and mouse, like it just doesn't feel as polished. Also, because like your FOV just sucks. Like that's probably the worst thing about when you have to play some games that were like not designed for console, but especially some of those early games, and you just don't have that much customization with your field of view. I just can't play on 80. I can't do it. I've been too spoiled with like 100 to 110, And that was another thing I did in Zombies in console commands, was I was like, hey, you know what I learned recently? Is that the campaign to Black Ops is like it ends up essentially just being an allegory for who killed JFK, really bringing it all back to the Kennedy family and being assassinated. I haven't played through it. I probably should, because as a kid I was like, wow, this campaign's awesome. I would always just play the mission in Vietnam, what does that say? And how the military-industrial complex is like indoctrinated in us. That I was like, yeah, I want to be in Vietnam. And then you get to an age where you figure out what happened in Vietnam. You're like, huh? You're like, what? And then you realize how many people in your life that you know that either lived through Vietnam or were actually boots on the ground in Vietnam. And you're like, Jesus. Like, people just not let that happen because, like, what is the American public going to do about it? You know? There's something I would have loved to have... I haven't looked into enough what the perception was at the time of how the media was selling the war to people. I know about the insane atrocities that happened while we were there and the fact that we had no business being there in the first place, and then we got our asses kicked by a bunch of farmers and we had to leave. But before we left, we were like, here's some Agent Orange. Suck on this, VC. Like, okay. But I have not looked into how that was sold to the American public. Because I know about the war in Afghanistan. I know about the war in Iraq and how we did that. This whole thing on Reddit. People on Reddit love bringing up Building 7 in collapsing on September 11th. I was just like doing a whole deep dive on a thread the other day. And people on Reddit are just like the biggest experts in the world on the exact temperature that steel needs to be in order to collapse in on itself. Those people know everything about that stuff. I just read it. I'm like, oh, upvote, blind upvote. That sounds right. That sounded smart. I don't know. I haven't given you guys a QAnon flavor of the week in a couple weeks. There hasn't been that much going on. They've really been focused on like 5G and Bluetooth in cemeteries specifically. A big one for, it's not really QAnon. It's like conservatives, like American conservatives going after, kind of cannibalizing themselves a little bit. Like there are some like, it's not even just like liberal influencers, like some conservative influencers who are just like lift weights and like are in shape and like are toned, you know, like not like jacked like bodybuilders, but like women who are in shape and like have muscles and like their bodies are defined in a certain way. And they're like calling them transvestites and saying how all of the estrogen is being breeded out of American women. That's like the topic of discussion this week. Huh? I never even got involved in the like frozen embryo bullshit that they were talking about for like 2 weeks. Cause I was like, is this what we're doing in an election year? Is this what the talking point's going to be? This isn't even kind of interesting. What are you guys talking about here? Well, folks, I think that's going to do it for today's episode of The Coping Hour. If you're listening to this on Spotify, be sure to rate 5 stars. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe. Nice little comment for the algorithm. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I will see you guys on Monday, and I will catch you guys
Computers now have
in the next
primary
one.
control.
Beautiful.